Well, here we go again. It's the end of the world. Oh, yeah. 2 scoops of hallelujah, 1 scoop of praise the Lord. Thanks for hopping on, everybody. Thanks for saying hi, and thanks for watching the video. So I figured I'd tackle something that's arguably the most complicated chapter in the Bible, Daniel 11. And I will be the first to admit I don't know everything. I don't know the entire history. But I do think this is a very interesting chapter. And as you know, if you've been following me, I've been really interested in Antiochus Epiphanes the fourth. And so that bumped me into Daniel 11 and lots of interpretations that I've been talking with a lot of people about this. And Samuel Huster has been very helpful with me. We've been having lots of conversations behind the scenes with a lot of history and dates, and he's made a lot of PDF files for me. We might do a live stream and bring him on soon, or just pre-record some more videos with him soon. He's been very, very helpful with me. And last night I was really wanting to do a video on. Hey Anna, hey everybody. I was really wanting to do a video on this particular subject, Daniel 11. See, a lot of people, when you just read the Bible, kind of like plainly, you just read it, and you're not really making the connection of the timing of when things were happening. And Daniel 11 essentially is this. Okay, so Daniel was more or less written in the 500s of BC. Well, let me just show you this chart and here we go. I'm just going to share this. Oh, this right here. This is Samuel's timeline. And I think I've linked this in the description box below. So he's basically made a timeline from the beginning of creation. He's saying the creation started around 3973 BC. And he made a chart all the way to the book of Revelation. And so right now we're hanging out in the green area where so the call of the prophet Jeremiah says, okay, you guys are going to go into captivity because, you need to repent. You didn't honor the Sabbaths. You're going for 70 years. And then it happens, and King Nebuchadnezzar takes them into captivity. And then Daniel 11 is basically more or less from around 539 and on until around 160, right around into the time of Antiochus. And so the amazing thing about this is it was written before this all happened, and it was very, very detailed. And some people think, oh, this is only related to the end times. And it actually is really exciting because what this is, um, it's basically a prophecy of world history. And so the exciting thing is, if you're an atheist and you're like, well, the Bible isn't real and all that kind of thing, well, the Bible pre-wrote history. It pre-wrote all these timelines of what happened between, like I said, around 500 to 100 BC. And so we're just going to go through that. We're going to read it. And we have this website right here. So here's the other thing too. I'm going to come back to the screen here. 1 second. I can't see you guys, but last night I really wanted to make this chart, and I was in the chat with Dale on Discord. I go, okay, I want to make a chart that's got the history of the year of when it happened, the verse, and then the verse, what happened in the verse, and the year that it correlates to. And so here we are, we're making this chart together, trying to do it from scratch. He's like, I'm sure somebody's already done this. And sure enough, somebody already did this, and it's great. So I'm just going to basically read this website in how it all comes together. And I want to read this verse too, Matthew 24, verse 15. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. So he's talking about the abomination of desolation. But I think it's really good to note here, he's saying Daniel the prophet. He's calling Daniel a prophet. So here we are in Daniel 11. Daniel's a prophetic book. What is Daniel 11 prophesying about? Well, it seems like it pre-prophesied about the history that has already happened. So, in other words, we can use historic events that have already happened to confirm the Bible is real. So, my audience here, my goal here is, if you're an atheist or just an uneducated Christian, you came to faith, all you know is Jesus died on the cross for you, and that's basically all you know, and you don't really know anything else. Well, this is a good video. Because I think it might help to explain some of the logical side of why we believe what we believe, and that kind of thing. So So let's go through it, and I'm just going to share my screen because I'm going to flip flop around, and yeah. So here we go. So let's share the screen and let's pull up this website. So this website, it's called angelfire.com. I believe I linked that in the description box. But so we're just going to go through verse by verse, Daniel 11. And so here it is. This is exactly basically what I wanted to make. So here's the year in BC. Here's the verse. And here's a bit of a historical blurb on what happened. Okay. So without further ado, 539 BC. And in the first year of Darius the Mede, I arose to be an encouragement and a protection for him. That's Daniel 11, verse 1. And then historically, there's some disagreement as to the identity of Darius the Mede. Some think it to be another name for Cyrus the Great, who was both a Mede as well as a Persian. Others feel it to be a reference to a Mede governor who ruled under Cyrus. So here we go. So there we go. This gives us a general timeline as to when Daniel 11 is prophesying. 530 to 465. And now I will tell you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings are going to arise in Persia. Then a fourth will gain far more riches than all of them as soon as he became strong. Through his riches he will arouse the whole empire against the realm of Greece. Daniel 11, verse 2. So Cyrus the Great captured Babylon in 539 BC. And here's the 3 kings that they're talking about. And also another great way to verify this website too is if you go to Bible Gateway, in particular, the Amplified version. By the way, everybody, I'm not a King James onlyist. I am a Jesus Christ onlyist. Jesus Christ is the only way. It doesn't say a particular translation is the only way. Some translations help us out and give us a bit more detail. And so Amplified translation, when it comes to Daniel 11, really fills in the gaps really nicely. So if you read through the Amplified version on the Bible Gateway, it'll actually give you these footnotes too as to who these kings are and who these characters are, and it's really wonderful. But that's just a side note if you're interested in doing that. Again, thank you to Samuel for pointing that out to me. Really cool. Anyway, so here's the 3 kings. I apologize if my pronunciations of some of these guys are not going to be accurate. But anyway, Cambius II, Cyrus' son, 530 to 522. Samarides, Cambius, alleged brother, 522. Darius I the Great, 521 to 486. And the 4th king was Xerxes, 486 to 465. He brought the strength of the Persian Empire against Greece, burning Athens to the ground and attempting to push into the southern peninsula before suffering the defeat of Salamis. Okay, so if we go over to this picture here, here's the thumbnail that I put on this video. A lot of the action was taking place in this region. Daniel 11 is talking a lot about this stuff. And I can't move this up again. Oh, okay. So here's King of South Egypt. There's the Ptolemy region, and then the Seleucid Empire region. And a lot of this stuff took place. A lot of the things written in Daniel 11 took place in this area, and Israel, right in the middle of it all. They're kind of just the pathway between all the chaos that happens in Daniel 11. But anyway, let's go back to the article here. So yeah, so there's moving on to Daniel 11, verse 3 and 4. This is 333 BC to 323 BC. And so we're getting closer to the time of Christ, right? Time of Christ he arrived somewhere in the ballpark, in my opinion, around 28 AD. He died somewhere in the ballpark of 32 AD. Some people believe that he died in 28 AD. Nonetheless, that's the general timeline. So this is a few hundred years before Jesus showed up. But anyway, 33 to 323, and a mighty king will arise, and he will rule with great authority and do as he pleases. But as soon as he has arisen, his kingdom will be broken up and parceled out toward the 4 points of the compass, though not to his own descendants, nor according to his own authority, which he wielded, for his sovereignty will be uprooted and given to others beside them. Daniel 11, 3 to 4. Let me just make sure everybody's happy here. Looks like everybody can hear me. All right, good. Going back. Okie dokie. So here's a little blurb on to explain that verse. So the prophecy now jumps forward to the rise of the great king who would accomplish all within his will. This is the story of Alexander the Great, the young king of Macedon, who conquered all the Persian empires and marched his army all the way to the borders of India before turning back. Alexander died in Babylon in the summer of 323 BC, a mere month before his 33rd birthday. His death plunged the newly found empire into war as one and then another of these generals attempted to take a portion for himself. So you can find all this information in Wikipedia and in world history. So this is quite incredible that essentially Daniel 11 was written before all these historic events took place. And Daniel is a prophetic book. So I think this is just super exciting. I'll be honest, I wouldn't care too much about all this if I didn't understand this. So once I kind of made the connection that, oh man, Daniel was prophesying about world history and it all happened. This is pretty great. This is excellent information to share to, an atheist that, or somebody that doesn't quite know what the Bible is all about, but they actually want tangible proof. Well, here it is. And so, this is just an overview of Daniel 11. I'm not going to go into every single little detail. And, but it's just like a get your feet wet kind of a video here. Anyway, so 323 to 283, then the king of the south will grow strong along with one of his princes who will gain ascendancy over him and obtain dominion. His domain will be a great dominion indeed. Daniel 11 verse 5. So Ptolemy the first Soter was one of Alexander's generals who took control of Egypt. One of his own generals was Seleucus, who eventually rose to ascendancy over Mesopotamia and Syria. So going back to that picture, there's Syria, and there's Egypt down here. There's Macedon over here. There's some other pictures too. I'll just show you too. There's the Caspian Sea, the Black Sea, which is referred to, Mediterranean Sea, which is referred to in a little bit of this. So it's clearly talking about this time. And later on, it does talk about this. There's some other pictures. There's India. I think it mentions this later on, the Indus River right here, right there. Got some other pictures I might bring up. It does say Asia Minor later on. Here is Asia Minor. This whole region, right? And Israel is just kind of, which is, like I said, it's kind of in the way of all this history, just in the middle of it all. Okay, let's get back to the file here. Okay, so Daniel 11:5. Then the king of the south will grow strong along with one of his princes who will gain ascendancy over him. I think I read this. And obtain dominion, and his dominion will be a great dominion indeed. Okay, let's go down to the next one. 252 BC. After some years, they will form an alliance, and the daughter of the king of the south will come to the king of the north to carry out a peaceful arrangement, but she will not retain her position of power, nor will he remain with his power, but she will be given up along with those who brought her in, and the one who stirred her or given her, as well as he who supported her in those times. Daniel 11:6. Ptolemy first died in 285, and his son, Ptolemy II, Philadelphus, eventually arranged an alliance with the Seleucid king Antiochus II. Yeah, there's so many names. I'm so glad that it's clarified here. In which Antiochus II was to marry Bernice, the daughter of Ptolemy II. However, Antiochus II already had a wife named Laodice, and she did not take kindly to being divorced. She conspired to have both Bernice and her infant son assassinated. Antiochus II was subsequently poisoned. Laodice ruled as regent until her own son, Seleucus II Callinicus, was old enough to assume the throne of the Seleucid Empire. And going back to that picture over here, there's a Seleucid Empire. Okay. All right. So 246 to 241 BC. But one of the descendants of her line will arise in his place. This is Daniel 11, verse 7. And he will come against her army and enter the fortress of the king of the north, and he will deal with them and display great strength. Well, there we go. Here's the historical little blurb on that. Ptolemy III, Aristides, organized a campaign to avenge the murder of his sister. He captured Antioch and marched all the way to Bactria, and also defeated the Seleucid navy in the Aegean, recapturing the former conquest of his father in Asia Minor. Yeah, and so I showed you Asia Minor. Let's see if I can find it again. There it is, Asia Minor. Very cool. All right. Again, this is just an overview of Daniel 11. I watched this 2-hour video on this great, excellent speaker talking about Daniel 11, and he was just touching on. I'm like, if you were to really get deep into this, you would have to do, oh man, hours and hours and hours and hours of content to really get into the thicker part of these stories. But anyway, yeah. But when you read just King James Version, which I have a hard copy of the King James Version. There's a lot of detail that is. A lot of these details just simply aren't in there. So you're just kind of reading it and you're not really understanding what you're reading. So I was just happy to bump into this. But anyway, 240 BC. And also their gods with their metal images and their precious vessels of silver and gold, he will take into captivity to Egypt. And he, on his part, will refrain from attacking the king of the north for some years. Then the later will enter the realm of the king of the south, but will return to his own land. Daniel 11, 8 through 9. And here's a little blurb. Ptolemy III went on to recapture the treasures that had been looted from Egypt in the days of Cambyses. Ptolemy III and Seleucus II eventually made a treaty in 240 BC. And Ptolemy III returned home to Egypt, where he was given the title by the Egyptians of Euergetes, good worker. Okay, so we're getting closer to Antiochus Epiphanes IV soon, but anyway, we're at 226 to 223. Daniel 11, verse 10. And his sons will mobilize and assemble a multitude of great forces, and one of them will keep on coming and overflow and pass through, that he may again wage war up to his very fortress. Seleucus II was succeeded by his son Seleucus III, who only lived 3 years before being followed by his younger brother Antiochus III. The great Antiochus III set out on a battle of conquest, marching to the borders of Egypt, where he was met by Ptolemy IV. And again, going back to here, they're kind of going through this area all the time here. All right. 218 BC, Daniel 11, verse 11 to 12. And the king of the south will be enraged and go forth and fight with the king of the north. Then the latter will raise a great multitude, but that multitude will be given into the hand of the former. When the multitude is carried away, his heart will be lifted up, and he will cause tens of thousands to fall. Yet he will not prevail. All right, so here's the historical blurb. Antiochus III was defeated by Ptolemy IV in the Battle of Raphia in 218 BC. Antiochus III had to give up Palestine and Phoenicia to Egypt. Over the next 15 years, Antioch III was busy fighting elsewhere, and his conquest took him all the way to the Caspian Sea in the north and to the Indus River in the east. Yeah, I think I shared that. Indus River, there it is. And there's the Caspian Sea. All right. Awesome. Hopefully you guys are tracking with me. I know this is one of those videos that it's like information overload. It's like this is really for the people that like numbers and history and proof, that kind of thing. All right. Back to it. 202 BC to 201 BC, for the king of the north will again raise a greater multitude than the former, and after an interval of some years he will press on with a great army and much equipment. Daniel 11:13, and the historical piece right here. Antiochus III returned to take up arms. Once more, I'm just going to read a little thing here. Oh, okay, never mind. Antiochus III returned to take up arms once more against Egypt, taking Gaza in 201 BC. And if we go back to that picture, Gaza, there's Gaza right here. Oops, make it bigger. Gaza's right here, right under Jerusalem. Okay, 201 BC. Now, and this is Daniel 11:14. Now in those times many will rise up against the king of the south. The violent ones among your people will also lift themselves up in order to fulfill the vision, but they will fall down. Daniel 11:14. A pro-Seleucid party rose up in Jerusalem, but it was put down by the Egyptian general Scopas, who pushed up to the area north of Israel that would be known as, don't know how to say that, Sarasi Philippi. Okay, 200 BC. Then the king of the north will come, cast up a sieged mound, and capture a well-fortified city, and the forces of the south will not stand their ground. Not even their choicest troops, for there will be no strength to make a stand. This is Daniel 11:15. As Antiochus III counteracted, Scopas retreated to Sidon and found himself under siege at that city by the Seleucid king, finally losing the city to him. So again, just a prophecy, a very detailed prophecy of things to come, and it was just kind of happened after Daniel 11 was written. I will say this: there are some people that argue, "Oh, yeah, it was written after the fact." It couldn't have been. God couldn't have. People say God couldn't have. It's not true. It's corrupt and stuff. It was written after the fact. No. God, the book of Daniel was a prophetic book. And so here's actually one little. I was reading some articles on this subject of people debating about the timing of when Daniel was written and that kind of thing. And this person wrote a nice little blurb in here, and I will make this a bit bigger so you can see it. So this person says, lots to consider here about, they're talking about the timing of when the Daniel was written, joining in sort of a bit of a debate on this, but lots to consider here, and much of it is way over my head and far beyond me, but nonetheless blame it on conservatism or tradition. But I think there is value in sticking to our guns, so to speak. I apologize for the conservative pun. I cannot help myself in believing that Daniel is indeed a prophetic book, speaking of things to come. If Daniel really did say, I had a vision, usually people are not having visions of things that have already happened. Many people will argue that Daniel's prophecy is too detailed and much too accurate to be true prophecy. I think this is a way of trying to rationalize things that cannot be rationalized. Many prophets in the Old Testament spoke of things that were yet to come, and many of those things happened as described in almost perfect detail. I think we would be walking on thin ice to say that Daniel is not a prophetic book, claiming to say that God would be leading us on to believe something about his word that really is not true in the first place. So thank you, Sparker223, about making a comment on this particular website 2 years ago. I thought that was pretty cool. Just kind of like I think it's called readingacts.com, and they were just talking about, the history of Daniel and all these scholarly people talking about all that. We don't need to get into that, but that's basically, I just read through all that in the comments in there. It was pretty neat. Okay, so where would we leave off? I think we left off here. So Antiochus III moved southward into Palestine, taking Jerusalem in 198 BC. 195, Daniel 11:17. And he will set his face to come with the power of his whole kingdom, bringing with him a proposal of peace, which he will put into effect. He will also give him the daughter of women to ruin it, but she will not take a stand for him or be on his side. Daniel 11:17. Antiochus III entered into an alliance with the young Ptolemy V, who was still a boy. The alliance was sealed by Ptolemy V marrying Cleopatra, the daughter of Antiochus III. Rather than being an influence on behalf of her father, Cleopatra became an ardent supporter of Egypt, even reigning a regent after the death of her husband in 181. So a lot of soap operas basically going on, a lot of back and forth, and there's an example of it there. Okay, so I'm just going to have a sip of water here. I'm going to go back to here. You guys doing all right? You guys surviving this? Okay. 192 BC. Then he will turn his face to the coastlands and capture many. But a commander will put a stop to his scorn against him. Moreover, he will repay him for his scorn. So that's Daniel 11:18. And here's our historical blurb explanation. Antiochus III has invaded Thrace and was now asked by a league of cities states in central Greece to aid them in the fight against Macedonia and the Peloponnesians. Oh boy, Peloponnesians. Oy boy, yeah. Peloponnesians. Okay, I think I got it. Meanwhile, the Romans threw in their weight against Antiochus III, and he was forced to withdraw from Greece. Ay. Party on. Okay, 189 to 188 BC. This is Daniel 11:19. So he will turn his face toward the fortress of his own land, but he will stumble and fall and be found no more. The Romans under Lucius Cornelius Scipio Asiaticus, the brother of Scipio Africanus, followed Antiochus III into Antiolia and met him in battle. Though the Romans were greatly outnumbered, they won a victory. Antiochus III had to give up all of Antiolia as well as his son, Antiochus IV, who went as hostage to Rome. So we're getting to one of the main characters here very soon. But anyway, 187. Then in his place, one will arise who will send an oppressor through the jewel of his kingdom. Yet within a few days, he will be shattered through neither in anger nor in battle. So that's Daniel 11, verse 20. Antiochus III was killed by an enraged mob when he attempted to rob the temple of Bel in Elymas to pay the Roman demands. Seleucus IV, Philopator, succeeded to the throne and sought to take funds from the temple in Jerusalem. This can be found in 2 Maccabees chapter 3, 7 through 40. Seleucus IV was eventually poisoned. So here we go. So now we're in Daniel 11, verses 21 through 35. And this particular article says these verses are to be understood as describing the career of Antiochus IV Epiphanes. And in my opinion, the best candidate to foreshadow the timing of the Antichrist and how the Antichrist is going to play out in the tribulation. So, verse 21, and it says approximately around 175 BC. So Daniel 11, verse 21, and in his place a despicable person will arise, on whom the honor of kingship has not been conferred, but he will come in a time of tranquility and seize the kingdom by intrigue. Daniel 11, verse 21. When Seleucus IV was murdered, his son Demetrius was the next in line for the throne, but the realm was instead taken by Antiochus IV, the second son of Antiochus III. He took for himself the title Epiphanes, God manifest, and therefore became a type of Antichrist. Yeah, great little line here. This is making my thoughts kind of confirm here. So Antiochus, anti-God essentially, Antichrist essentially, is literally his name, because Epiphanes basically means God manifest. Versus Antiochus, so anti-God, Antichrist. Pretty interesting. And then the rest of these verses seem to talk about his time in this time. So 170, we're a few years away from when he set up the abomination. So this is verse 22 now. And the overflowing forces will be flooded away before him and shattered. And also the prince of the covenant. Daniel 11, verse 22. Ptolemy the seventh, it looks like now we're talking about, Philometor became of age and attempted to regain the lands of Palestine from the Seleucids, but was eventually defeated and captured by Antiochus IV. Daniel 11, verse 23, in 170 BC. And after an alliance is made with him, he will practice deception, and he will go up and gain power with a small force of people. And the Egyptians responding by taking Physcon, the brother of Ptolemy the seventh, and making him the new king of Egypt. Antiochus IV responded by invading Egypt with the stated purpose of placing Ptolemy the seventh back on the throne. Just so much history here. It's so crazy. Okay. In a time of tranquility, he will enter the richest parts of the realm, and he will accomplish what his fathers never did, nor his ancestors. He will distribute plunder, booty, and possessions among them, and he will devise his schemes against strongholds, but only for a time. That was Daniel 11:24. And the basic summary here, this is a summary of the accomplishments of Antiochus IV. By this time, he had gained control of everything from the Mediterranean to India. So again, going back to this Mediterranean to India. India is, well, it's over here somewhere. Maybe you got a better picture here. There we go. India. So the whole region there. Okay. Still in 170 BC, Daniel 11:25, and he will stir up his strength and courage against the king of the south with a large army. So the king of the south will mobilize an extremely large and mighty army for war, but he will not stand, for schemes will be devised against him. Ptolemy VII eventually worked out an agreement with his brother, Physicon, in which they would split the kingdom of Egypt into two parts and reign jointly. They now unified themselves against Antiochus IV, but he entered Egypt and laid siege to Alexandria. We're still in 170, Daniel 11:26, and those who eat his choice food will destroy him, and his army will overflow, but many will fall down slain. Ptolemy VII had supposedly been under the protection of Antiochus IV, but now they found themselves at odds. Daniel 11:27, as for both kings, their hearts will be intent on evil, and they will speak lies to each other at the same table. But it will not succeed, for the end is still to come at the appointed time. Daniel 11:27. Negotiations continued, and Ptolemy VII and his brother Physicon seemed to come to an agreement. Through the intrigues between them would continue for some time. 169 BC. Now we're super close to the Abomination of Desolation timing here. Daniel 11:20. Then he will return to his land with much plunder, but his heart will be set against the Holy Covenant, and he will take action and then return to his own land. Antiochus IV returned from Egypt with great plunder. Several years earlier, he had accepted a bribe from a Jewish priest named Jason to remove the current high priest and put Jason in his place. Jason was eventually removed with another priest. Menelaus offered a still higher bribe. When Jewish representatives came before the king with their complaint, Antiochus IV put them to death. Okay, 168 BC, the Daniel 11:29. At the appointed time, he will return and come into the south. But this last time, it will not turn out the way it did before. And then the explanation, Antiochus IV invaded Egypt again, trapping the two Ptolemaic kings in Alexandria. And here's the picture again. Here's the Ptolemaic Empire, right in that region. Okay. Where are we? I think we're here now. 168 BC. For the ships of Kittim, and that's what we were talking about with the Joseph Good video. If you haven't seen the Joseph Good video that I did, I don't know, 2 weeks ago or something, that it was pretty good. He touched on this. For ships of Kittim will come against him. Therefore, he will be disheartened and will return and become enraged at the Holy Covenant and take action. So he will come back and show regard for those who forsake the Holy Covenant. Daniel 11, verse 30. Gaius Popilius Leonis, a representative of Rome, met with Antiochus IV and ordered him out of Egypt on the authority of Rome. Antiochus IV agreed, but he wasn't happy. So coming to Jerusalem, he found the Jews in revolt with Jason, where Jason, acting on the rumor that Antiochus IV had been killed in Egypt, had raised a force to remove Menelaus from the priesthood. And so on this section, this is still something I need to refresh my memory, but basically Antiochus wanted to invade Egypt, and he was kind of denied there on the authority of Rome. So he wanted to take it out on somebody, and so he took it out on the Jews. But anyway, 168 BC, and forces from him will arise, desecrate the sanctuary fortress, and do away with the regular sacrifice, and they will set up the abomination of desolation, Daniel 11:31. And that's basically what happened in and around 167 BC, give or take. Antiochus IV desecrated the temple. Here it is. Here's the explanation. Stop the regular temple sacrifices and set up a statue of Zeus in the temple whose features were made to resemble Antiochus IV. I mean, this is a pretty big deal. And so right now I'm looking at potentially the midpoint to mirror this story of when Antiochus set up the Abomination of Desolation. That translates to December 6th, 2025. if we're looking at a tribulation to start this summer. Very speculative, very open-minded about all this, but it certainly seems to fit real nice with our timing. 167 BC, and by smooth words he will turn to godlessness those who act wickedly toward the covenant. That's Daniel 11:32. And here's a little bit of an explanation. First Maccabees, chapter 1, 11 through 15, describe how certain people of the Jews accepted the changes of Antiochus IV and went so far as to build a gymnasium in Jerusalem and to seek to have their circumcision reversed. Not really sure how that works, but okay. Verse 43 goes on to say that many, even from Israel, gladly adopted his religion. They sacrificed to idols and profaned the Sabbath. Uh-oh. That's no good. No good at all. Okay, 167 BC. But the people who know their God will display strength and take action. Daniel 11:32b. Well, this is the Maccabees. They're saying, we're not doing this. But this blurb says there were those Jews who refused to turn from their observance of the law. This turned into open revolt when the Maccabees took up arms against the Seleucids. So now we're getting into the story of Hanukkah here. 167. And those who have insight among the people will give understanding to the many. Yet they will fall by the sword and by the flame, by captivity and by plunder for many days. Daniel 11:33. So, since they were fighting in order to retain their Torah observances, the Maccabees initially took a stance of not fighting on a Sabbath day. Yeah. So basically, the enemy took advantage of this. Well, I'll just read this. The Seleucids took advantage of this by attacking on the Sabbath and slaughtering many because they would simply just stand there because it was Sabbath. But then after this, the priest Mattanias, father of the Maccabees, explained to the people that it would be permissible to defend themselves on the Sabbath. Well, a good thing they woke up because they all would have been just slaughtered every Sabbath. That would have been bad news for them. 167 BC. Now when they fall, they will be granted a little help, and many will join with them in hypocrisy. This is Daniel 11:34. I think another word for that word. Let's go see what Amplified says. Oh, hypocrisy. Okay, so what does my Bible say? It doesn't say hypocrisy. It says something else. Intrigue. But anyway, okay, let's go back to that. The Maccabees were joined by a company of Hasideans, mighty warriors of Israel, all who offered themselves willingly for the law. 1 Maccabees chapter 2, verse 42. As a result, many who had previously gone along with the changes imposed by Antiochus IV now join the revolt. Okay, there you go. So now they're fighting back. 166. And some of those who have insight will fall in order to make or refine, purge, and make them pure until the end time, because it is still to come at the appointed time. Daniel 11:35. The priest Mattanias died shortly thereafter. Eventually, the Maccabees managed to retake the temple and to purify it and to restore the worship. This is celebrated today as Hanukkah, and it is estimated that they took back the temple in 164 BC, approximately 3 years after Antiochus Epiphanes IV set up his Abomination of Desolation on the 15th day of the 9th month, approximately 167 BC. So they were out in the wilderness for a couple of years, around 3 years. Could be more, could be less. Not entirely sure. But this is just, like I said, an overview of the history of Daniel 11. It's so neat that it was, again, spoken of before it happened, and then it happened in such intricate detail, which can be verified through, Wikipedia sources. This is what's exciting. It's one thing to confirm the Bible within itself, and then it's another thing to confirm the Bible with historical events. And this is what's happening, and this is why this is exciting. I know this kind of sounds dry and sort of boring, but it's really exciting to kind of read this kind of stuff. Okay, so here's the last chunk of Daniel 11, and on this article it says the attention of the prophecy now returns to Antiochus IV and summarizes his career without regard to a chronological sequence. Yeah, so the majority of Antiochus IV, his time was 167 to 160 BC. So this is just now an overview of him and the timing of of all this that happened. So we'll just read through that. So Daniel 11:36, again, all within the 160s BC. Anywhere from 167 to 160 BC is likely what we're dealing with the next couple verses. Then the king will do as he pleases, and he will exalt and magnify himself above every god, and will speak monstrous things against the God of gods, and he will prosper until the indignation is finished. For that which is decreed will be done. Daniel 11:36. Here's a little explanation. So Antiochus carried off 1,800 talents from the temple and hurried away to Antioch, thinking in his arrogance that he could sail on the land and walk on the sea, because his mind was elated. 2 Maccabees 5:21. This guy thought he was the cat's meow. Anyway, furthermore, he eventually adopted the title King Antiochus, God manifests. I am God, basically, is what he's saying. I'm the big guy. Nobody can stop me. If you try, well, you're done. Oh, let me just fix this 1 second. All right. Okay. And he will show no regard for the gods of his fathers or for the desire of women, nor will he show regard for any other gods, for he will magnify himself above all. All right, Daniel 11:37. Sounds like an Antichrist character to me. And again, what will happen before will happen again. Okay, so speaking of Antiochus IV, we read the following report in 2 Maccabees 9-2, or 9 verse 2. He had entered the city called Parasopolis and attempted to rob the temples and control the city. Therefore, the people rushed to the rescue with arms, and Antiochus and his army were defeated, with the result that Antiochus was put to flight by the inhabitants and beat a shameful retreat. It is noteworthy that the coins of his era have the images of Zeus rather than the more customary Apollos. And that Daniel 11:38 is also speaking into that. But instead, he will honor a god of fortress, a god whom his fathers did not know. He will honor him with gold, silver, costly stones, and treasures. Daniel 11:39, and he will take action against the strongest of fortresses with the help of a foreign god. He will give great honor to those who acknowledge him, and he will cause them to rule over the many, and he will parcel out land for a price. The explanation: Antiochus IV sold the priesthood to the highest bidder, first to Jason and later to Menelaus. The strongest of fortresses seems to be a reference to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, which Antiochus IV determined to convert to a temple to Zeus. Yeah. All right. Daniel 11:40. And at the end time, the king of the south will collide with him, and the king of the north will storm against him with chariots, with horsemen, and with many ships, and he will enter countries, overflow them, and pass through. Daniel 11:41. And he will also enter the beautiful land, and many countries will fall, but these will be rescued out of his hand: Edom, Moab, and the foremost of the sons of Ammon. Explanation: we have no records of any final war with Egypt. Through Jerome quotes Porphyry as stating that this took place in the 11th year of the reign of Antiochus IV. Commentary on the Book of Daniel, Moses Stewart, 1850, Boston, Quaker and Brewster, page 355. I did not take a look at this, but this is what this person is writing. It is more likely that we are to understand this as a summarization of the career of Antiochus IV and his invasions of Egypt and Israel. Yeah, sounds good to me. Okay, Daniel 11:42. Then he will stretch out his hand against other countries, and the land of Egypt will not escape. A summary of the conquest of Antiochus IV in Egypt. Daniel 11:43. But he will gain control over the hidden treasures of gold and silver, and over the precious things of Egypt. And Libyans and Ethiopians will follow at his heel. Explanation: prior to his departure from Egypt, Antiochus IV had thoroughly looted the country. Daniel 11:44. But rumors from the east and from the north will disturb him, and he will go forth with great wrath to destroy and annihilate many. Antiochus IV left Israel upon hearing the news of revolts in Parathia and Anatolia. Daniel 11:45. And he will pitch tents of his royal pavilion between the seas and the beautiful holy mountain, yet he will come to his end, and no one will help him. Daniel 11:45. Though he had successfully conquered Jerusalem and the holy mountain, Antiochus IV eventually met his defeat and death. Awesome. I think I wanted to read this too. I don't remember when I wanted to read this, but this is part of the history too. I'll just read a couple paragraphs here. So, the City of Pagans. So this was Caesarea Philippi, which stood in a lush area near the foot of Mount Hermon. I think this is around 200 BC. I can't remember which part of Daniel 11 referenced this, but it referenced it at one point, and I wanted to read this. It was a city dominated by immoral activities and pagan worship. Caesarea Philippi stood only 25 miles from the religious communities in Galilee, but the city's religious practices were vastly different from those of the nearby Jewish towns. In Old Testament times, the northeastern area of Israel became a center for Baal worship. In the nearby city of Dan, Israelites King Jeroboam built the high place that angered God and eventually led the Israelites to worship false gods. Eventually, worship of the Baals was replaced with worship of Greek fertility gods. Caesarea Philippi, which stood in a lush area near the foot of Mount Hermon, became their religious center for worship of the Greek god Pan. The Greeks named the city Peneus in his honor. Years later, when Romans conquered the territory, Herod Philip rebuilt the city and named it after himself. But Caesarea Philippi continued to focus on worship of Greek gods. In the cliff that stood above the city, local people built shrines and temples to Pan. Interestingly, Jesus chose to deliver a sort of graduation speech to his disciples at this location. I can't say it right. Caesarea Philippi. In that pagan setting, he encouraged his disciples to build a church that would overcome the worst evils. The gates of hell. To the pagan mind, the cave of Caesarea Philippi created a gate to the underworld, where fertility gods lived during the winter. They committed detestable acts to worship these false gods. Anyway, there's more to this. I'll leave that in the description box, but that's a pretty interesting thing, how it's very contextual to the time that they were in. Now, was there anything else that I wanted to show here? There are some maps of some of this time as well. I'll try and make sure these are all linked. Some more maps. This is for sure linked. But this is just a really light overview of Daniel 11, one of the most historic books in the Bible, kind of explained. Here, I'm going to press this now. It's so cool because, honestly, a couple years ago, I couldn't care less about this kind of thing, right? Like, why do I need to know about history? But the fact that it seems to have been written maybe in and around, I don't know, I'm just speculating, maybe in the mid 500s, something like that. Maybe the low 500s before all this happened. And then we've got this 400 years of timeline explained in one chapter of Daniel. Really interesting. Now, here's the other interesting thing too, is what happened before can happen again. So a lot of people might say that Daniel 11 is a prophecy of things to come. And it's very, very likely, very possible that it's like a dual prophecy. Very likely. And so I wasn't able to read the chats. I'm sure maybe somebody said that or something, but it's very likely a dual prophecy. And it's really interesting when you read different translations and when they like I said, I'm not a King James onlyist, but when you read different translations, sometimes they give you more details, and the Amplified version seems to be the version that gives you more details on the whole history of Daniel 11. So I think it's really fascinating. This is more for the people that, again, are numbers guys, historian buffs. They like to have charts and graphs and that kind of thing. It's not really for the emotionally wired people. But hey, we need both kind of people. So, anything else that I wanted to say before I close? Yes, this video will be available after. And like I said, I'll try and make sure I link everything that I shared. And if you're an atheist or somebody that's not a believer, this is what I want you to do. I want you to pray and ask God to reveal this truth to you, because there's going to be a part of you that's not going to want to hear this. If you're not ready to hear that the Bible is true and accurate and historical, you're just going to choose not to believe. What's that saying? You can bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I hope I got that saying right. I can't force you to believe in God and can't force you to believe that the Bible is true, but I can certainly invite you into this information. It's up to you if you want to, look into this yourself. And I encourage you to do that. And also to my Christian friends, some people say, who cares? It's not important. I don't need to know that. I encourage you to educate yourself and to study as well, and to take this and verify it. And if there's something wrong that I said, then check on it. Certainly do that. And another thing too that I want people to understand is you shouldn't just follow people. You should follow Christ. Just because you like me doesn't mean I say everything accurately. And same thing with other YouTube people. Just because you follow somebody doesn't mean they're the gospel. Like none of us are gospel, 100% perfect people. There are so many channels that I follow. Almost every video I hear something that I don't like, but you got to look past that. But the more you study individually, you're going to be able to have higher discernment when you can say, oh, that guy just said 60 things, and because I read the Bible, 3 of the 60 things that the guy said is wrong. That's okay though, but I know it's wrong because I read the Bible myself, right? So make sure you are not following somebody just saying, okay, the guy said 60 things and all the 60 things that he said is correct just because I like the guy. Well, no. No way, man. Don't do that. Don't follow dudes, follow Jesus, and your Holy Spirit is your best teacher. So, the document that I read, maybe some of the years were wrong. Maybe some things in there were not entirely accurate. I'm not quite sure. I'm just presenting a surface level video here, and the overview of this video is, again, just for the simple dude, the layman, the redneck, the simple Canadian that likes a donut. Daniel 11 was written somewhere in the 500s, likely. And then all the history was fulfilled to a T from approximately 500 to 100 BC, more or less. Okay. There you go. Take it or leave it. I think that's really fascinating information and fascinating history. So with that, I'll end that, and hope that was a blessing to the math guys and the historian guys and date guys. And see in the clouds. Go, Jesus, go. One day closer. Takarisi, guys. Oh, get tight with Christ. Yeah. Get tight with Christ. Romans 10, 9 through 13. Confess with your mouth and believe in your heart, and you shall be saved. Ephesians 2, 8, 9. Read that. John 3, 16 through 18. Romans 3, 23 through 24. All these things, all these verses to direct you into a relationship with Christ. Time is short. Tribulation is near. There's more things that we can talk about with the book of Daniel, pointing to this time. I don't want to make this video too long, but we'll be talking about these things more and more as we see the great day approaching, the rapture of the church. Okay, so with that, let's build this popsicle stand. Let's fly to the clouds, guys. Okay, takaresi.